Hi, everyone. Welcome to We Are Triathletes webinar series. I'm really excited that Amy Yeoman is with us. She is a registered dietitian and nutritionist, and she's also a USA triathlon coach. And without further ado, Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Totally. Yeah. So I have been a dietitian for 3 years, and I mainly work with endurance athletes. I just love kind of that population. One, because I am an endurance athlete, and two, because I just feel like nutrition can make such a huge difference in performance and recovery, and really your overall ability to be a triathlete. And a lot of times people don't focus on it, but when athletes do take the time to really like dial in their nutrition, it can make such a big difference. So that's exciting for me to be a part of that process with people. And I hope you guys can learn some things today.
So let's start with what would be the proper thing to do for training and then also for racing. Let's start there, and then I have some questions after that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so as far as training, I always tell athletes to kind of think of their bodies like a fuel tank, and you want to keep it like the fuel tank full. So I always say eat, recover, repeat, because that's kind of the cycle that you're in with food. Is you're eating to train, and then immediately getting into that recovery phase, so that you can train again hard the next time. Especially with athletes, when you're in season, you're really like, whether you're doing 2 days or big workouts, whatever it is, you're stressing your body a lot. So the more you can do to help recover is really beneficial for you. Some tips that I have would be kind of during your training block, really focusing on your pre-workout, which depending on what time of day that pre-workout or that workout is, you can kind of play with it with meals and stuff. But as far as kind of a guideline, I would suggest getting at least 20 grams of carbohydrate right before that workout. For some people, they can't really, their stomachs can't handle that. So I say like within an hour and a half before that workout is a good time frame. And you're gonna want easily digestible carbohydrates. So things that are gonna sit well. Usually I feel like fruit sits pretty well for people. Things like cereal or pretzels or toast or something that's not full of a ton of fiber. You kind of want to avoid fat and protein as well, because the protein, you really only utilize about 6% of it for energy. And fat, it can take 10 hours to even get through your stomach. So you're not really utilizing any of that for energy as well. And then for post-workout, really focusing on a carbohydrate and a protein. So the ideal ratio would be a 3-to-1 carb to protein ratio. So 1 gram of protein for every 3 grams of carbohydrate. You're going to want to get that in within like 30 minutes of finishing your workout. Some examples, like I'll often do chocolate milk. I know that's like kind of a, I don't know. It's like some people will ask, is that real, or does the chocolate milk industry pay for that? And I'm like, no, it's a good mix of carbohydrates and protein. And it can kind of hold me over until I can get a real meal in. Also, I know some of the various, I'm trying to think of the companies, like Hammer has a good recovery product that kind of falls within that. Those products are generally created to fit that ratio. So keep that in mind. And then for those longer workouts, the workouts that are lasting more than an hour, you're looking for like 45 to 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour. And that's going to be different for everybody. And I really encourage you to like play around with different options, because different carbohydrates, like the different sugars, can be absorbed at different rates. So you like maltodextrin, for example, maltodextrin and glucose together can be absorbed more quickly than just glucose. And that's where you can kind of hit those higher numbers, closer to 90 grams per hour of carbohydrate. That's something to definitely play with your like your electrolyte intake and your fluid intake. All of that can be really important. And then kind of as far as the rest of the day goes, really think about those carbohydrates are essential. The carbohydrates that you should kind of be focusing on the rest of the day are not necessarily those quick carbohydrates, but more like the slow absorbing starches. So oats, whole grains, brown rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes, squash, corn, peas, those are all starchy foods. I encourage like a third of your plate to be full of starches, a third of your plate to be vegetables, and then a third of your plate to be proteins.
Okay, so I'd love you to talk a little bit. I mean, maybe you could narrow that down for us. Maybe you could just walk us through what we should do during normal training.
Yeah.
You know, just give us an example, and then give us an example a week before the actual race, and
Okay.
then at the race.
Okay. So I'll walk you through kind of my day during a training season. So usually I'm doing a lot of my training in the morning. I wake up and I have half a piece of toast with a little bit of almond butter and half a banana. And that is for a workout that's going to be less than an hour. So I'll get that in, and then usually about 20 minutes later, I'm exercising. I'll usually, if I'm on the bike, I have water with me. If not, I guess if I'm swimming, I have water with me too. But really, I focus on the water after. And that's when I usually actually mix my chocolate milk with my coffee. And then I'll do oatmeal. But one thing that I really encourage with oatmeal is to still get some protein in there. So I'll do oats with like a mix of nuts and seeds, some berries, half a banana, and then I'll put some Greek yogurt in there actually to get some protein. And then usually come like 11, again, I'm hungry. And so I'll do kind of that mix of a third of my plate starches, a third of my plate protein, and a third of my plate vegetables. So whether that be, usually it's leftovers, to be honest, but that could be like 5 ounces of meat for me, about like a cup of rice, and then a good like cup and a half of vegetables. For my afternoon snack, especially if I'm going to be training again, I really focus on those carbohydrates. So I do like a apple and an RX bar, which if you don't know RX bars, definitely look into them. They're awesome. Or if I'm not going to be training, I can kind of mix that up a little bit more and focus a little bit more on protein. I don't have to be quite as careful with what I eat. So even like a mix of Greek yogurt and some berries, or I love peanut butter. So peanut butter and apple, that's a good snack for me. And then dinner will often look very similar to what my lunch looked like. And then in the evening, I'm kind of gauging how hungry I am. If I'm still hungry, things like, I know I keep saying it, but Greek yogurt and cottage cheese, they have casein in it, which is a slow absorbing protein, which is good to be getting in the middle, like as you're going to sleep, because it can help maintain your muscle through the fast of the evening. I know it's really tempting to go for like something really sweet at night, but I would encourage you most nights to not do that, because that doesn't really help with weight maintenance or weight loss. And then as far as the days leading up to a race, I'm more focused on those starches. As the days get closer to the race, I'm increasing my percentage of starches throughout the day. So not that I'm increasing my calories, and I think that that's an area that kind of gets muddled sometimes, where people will keep their protein and their veggie intake the same, but then just continue to add more starches and more fruit. Basically what you're doing is you're shifting those proportions so that you're having more starch, more fruit, more of those carbohydrates leading up to the race. Usually for most people, their training's tapering down, and it's kind of as your training tapers down, your carbohydrate intake needs to taper up. So I think doing things like, I'm trying to think of an example, like if you're gonna have chicken and rice and a veggie for lunch or dinner, like just make more of that dinner rice than chicken. And then the day before, you're really wanting to focus on those carbohydrates. My husband and I will do like we do pancakes the night before. That's kind of like our standard thing. So we'll do that. And then the morning of, I usually do a bagel. He usually does oatmeal. It's something that like really practice it, play with it, and make sure that as you enter into that race day, you know exactly what you're doing. You know exactly how it's going to sit. Don't try anything new, because you might just be setting yourself up for failure.
So what do you think about carb loading? I mean, does it make sense to eat white pasta and, right before a race?
Totally. So all carbohydrates are kind of gauged on a scale of what we call glycemic index. So most of the time, for most day-to-day eating, we encourage a lower glycemic index, because what that means is it's being absorbed more slowly into your system, so that energy can last longer for you. And that would be like your whole grains, basically things that have carbohydrates that have fiber attached with them. So a lot of the vegetables are lower. The fruits are like medium low. Most of them are medium low. But as you get closer to that race, those like the white pasta, the white bread, white bagels, all those things become really important because of their glycemic index. They're going to get into your system faster. They're going to be absorbed faster. And they don't have the fiber attached with them, which I don't know if any of you have ever like come race morning and you're nervous already and your stomach's not doing great. And then if you've had a ton of fiber, it's just kind of a disaster that morning. So as that race gets closer, you're going to want to stay away from over fiber, which by switching to those white products can be beneficial.
So talk to me a little bit about, a lot of people, they get into this, they want to have a healthy lifestyle, but they also want to lose weight.
Totally.
Is there a way to do that while you're racing? I mean, I know like a lot of people tell me that when they do an Ironman event, they end up gaining weight and then the metabolism is off. So what would you recommend?
For most of my athletes, I tell them that the off season is a really good time to be focusing on weight loss. If you have like race specific goals and you want a PR, then trying to lose weight during the season is not going to lead really to a successful race. Not all the time, but for most cases, because you're putting your body in a deficit and you're training harder. Those two things usually don't result in increased performance. So if you are trying to lose weight during season, I would just kind of assess your goals for the race and see, maybe you need to set a more realistic goal, or prioritize the race and then focus on weight loss in the off season, which is a totally okay way to do it. Some things that you can do like during the season is, most endurance athletes get that mindset of like, oh, I deserve to eat this, or I worked so hard, like I'll indulge tonight. And the thing is we're always working hard, so that excuse can always kind of be used. And so maybe assess how often you're using that and kind of see if you need to take that back a little bit. We do, especially like half Ironman distances, we're burning a crazy amount of calories. So you do need to replace those, but that doesn't mean eating pizza and burgers every night. So kind of keep that in mind. And then come off season, when you're wanting to focus more on that, watch portion sizes. A lot of times people will come to me and say, I have to learn to not eat like an Ironman in the off season. And it's true. You're used to burning so many calories, and then your off season comes and your training goes down, and you kind of have to relearn how to eat. But I think really focusing on those hunger and fullness cues, Making sure you're getting a lot of vegetables, like fill your plate with vegetables because they're going to fill you up, but they're not going to necessarily add a lot of calories. Playing with portion sizes, listening to, like, I use a hunger and fullness scale. So one would be, it's like a scale of 1 to 10. One would be like you're starving. You're about to maybe like hangry is what I would call it. 10 would be like Thanksgiving full. And you're kind of wanting to stay between that 3 and 6 range. 3 would be where you're starting to notice that you're getting hungry. And 6 would be like you're satisfied, but you're not really feeling distension in your stomach. Those are some things that I think are helpful. Also tracking calories. I mean, I'm not a huge calorie counting. I'm not a huge advocate for that, but I do think that it can be helpful as you come into the off season to kind of have a calorie range that you're shooting for.
So we have a couple of questions in the queue.
Yeah.
The first is, do you recommend any changes in nutrition for us triathletes that are in our 50s or older?
Yes, I've been asked that a lot. And all the research I've done is it's the same. I mean, if you're training just as hard as, well, if you're training the hours that you've always been training, you still need to fuel that. As you get older, there's more importance in protein. And I think that protein gets harder to eat as you get older. I just hear that often, that like, it doesn't sound as appealing anymore. So not that protein should be a main focus. I still want those starches to be a main focus, but make sure you're getting your protein in, especially as you age. And then focusing on those lower glycemic index foods most of the day. So like I said, the sweet potatoes, brown rice, oats, quinoa, whole wheat bread, things like that. Those are the things that are gonna fuel you well, but also keep weight kind of where you want it to be.
The next question is, what do you think about eating during a long race? Irem just did a 50K this weekend, and she said people were eating foods like hot dogs and stuff that she wouldn't normally eat, gels, that type of thing. What would be an option to gels?
Yeah. So the gels and the liquids, those are all great. They're kind of formulated to give you the right amount of carbohydrates per hour. But if you're looking for more of a solid food, make sure it's like 95% carbohydrates. So like I use Nature Bakery fig bars. That's like one of my go-to solid foods, or making like a peanut butter and honey or jelly sandwich on white bread. That would be another option. Pretzels, Cheerios, things like that are gonna fuel you better than something like a hot dog, because that's just it's a lot of fat, it's a lot of protein that you can't really utilize for energy.
I wanted to ask you about protein shakes. Is this something that we should be doing every day?
Totally. I think if you have a hard time getting protein in, then a protein shake is fine. And I would suggest like throwing it in your smoothie. Make sure you're getting a good mix of like adding some fat into that smoothie too. I add oats into my smoothie just so it's not like that quick absorbing carbohydrate and a protein, because it's not going to last. The energy is not going to last you long. Another place where a protein shake would be good is if you find yourself like you're not close to home, you finished a workout and it's going to be a little while before you eat. Grabbing a protein shake, but also pair that with like a piece of fruit or a carbohydrate of some sort, because the carbohydrate, it like opens the muscle to allow the protein to get into the muscle to be utilized. So I don't necessarily think protein shakes are bad, but I wouldn't suggest, like, some people will have a couple throughout the day, and I don't necessarily think that's necessary. Just use them like appropriately.
Okay, so another question in the queue, and this is, there's been a couple of marathoners and ultra marathoners who just did races. So Ray is asking, any recommendation for nutrition the week after a marathon or a long race?
Totally. So that meal right after, you're going to want a good mix of carbohydrates and protein. I like kind of skip over talking about that meal just because I feel like for most people it's like the celebratory meal, which I think is totally fine. You just worked your butt off. So definitely enjoy that meal. And then as you're recovering, if you think about a longer event, you've burned so many calories that it's going to take you a couple days to get back to a baseline. Like you will be in a deficit for a couple days. So I would say just kind of eat to match your hunger. Going back to maybe that analogy of a third of your plate being starch, a third of your plate being vegetables, a third of your plate being protein, would be a good place to go. And then if your training continues to be lower, then I would even switch that to more like a quarter of your plate starch, a quarter of your plate protein, and half of your plate vegetables. Really, like you just need to give your body enough energy to recover during that week. So even things like, I'm not huge on like supplementation, but doing things like fish oils, eating fish, eating walnuts, a lot of those omega-3s can help with inflammation. Avoiding like indulging too much on the other end, because a lot of times those foods are inflammatory and they're not going to help you recover. Making sure you're getting enough liquids and fluids to replace all that you've lost is another thing to be focusing on.
Any other questions? I would like to know what you think about gels. I mean, do you think that it's better that we create our own little packets to take with us? Or, you know, is our honey stinkers or maple syrup okay?
Totally. So I honestly think that gels and those like the chews, they're formulated to be a perfect carbohydrate mix for maximum absorption. I don't necessarily think like I know some people will make sweet potatoes or they might make their own gels, and I think that that's awesome. I also think it's pretty unrealistic for the average person to kind of be able to spend the time doing that. But kind of going back to different sugars or different carbohydrates have different absorption rates. And when you can mix like a glucose and a fructose and a maltodextrin, you're going to be able to absorb more of that and utilize more of that than if you're getting straight glucose or fructose or maltodextrin. So that's another nice thing about those gels is they're formulated in a way for maximum absorption. Whereas if you're eating a potato, it's got some fiber in it, it's got some other things in it that aren't necessarily going to give you energy. They're going to be used for other things, but not necessarily energy.
Okay. This was really informative. Does anybody else have any questions before we wrap this up? I'm going to like put everybody on unmute so that, let's see. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? I guess then let me just put everybody back on mute. And I guess that's about it. Just tell us, Amy, tell us about your company and how people can get in touch with you if they have any questions.
Totally. So the business name is Fuel to Thrive. And some of the things that I can offer endurance athletes is I work with people throughout their season and throughout their off season, whether they're like needing help fueling during their season, their energy levels are low, they just can't seem to get their like workout nutrition right. I help people with fueling plans, kind of the race or the week of race and then race day, what exactly you should be doing. during off season, helping people with weight loss, or just like eating the correct amount of calories. Yeah, I mean, I would never want to steal any of you as coaching athletes, but I can definitely take you as nutrition athletes, and working with you that way. And to get a hold of me, just look up Fuel to Thrive. I'm in Spokane, Washington. My number is a Colorado number, so it's a 303-918-0569. So don't get thrown off by that. Or you can like me on Instagram or follow me on Instagram, and my name is fuel_to_thrive.
Awesome.
So that would be another way to get a hold of me.
And what I'll do for the recap, because there were several people who were unable to make it today, I will put it on the scroll bar so that people can get in touch with you. So if you watch this again, you'll have the information.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. This was really great.
Yes, thanks for having me. Good luck with all of your seasons.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.